You're about to watch part 2 of me and May watching every single anime ever. However, I have to give a little notation at the start of this. You may have noticed it took like 2 weeks for this to come out. Well, we actually recorded the part like the night after the first one was released. And it's sat on my computer because the first episode had a lot of editing, and I thought I might do that for all the episodes. Since the first episode, in a fit of excitement, I had edited it that night, only to realize that doing the amount of editing I did on that video for every single one would not only be unreasonable, but it would mean that this series will never conclude. Even if it continued, at best I'd be able to edit one of these a week. And if the excitement about the series had been like astronomical, if it had gotten like 50,000 plus views or something, maybe I would have thought about editing every single episode and kept that energy up. But as it stands, I just do not have time to do that and all the other stuff that I do in my life. So, yeah, there's not going to be the same kind of editing that there was for part 1. I would encourage you to just watch all of these movies. They are all short. I have a link to the website that has all of them in the description. So, you know, this is just going to be more like traditional finish or fail. Also, this episode has, aside from this 1 minute piece you're watching right now, about 10 minutes of preamble. So if you want to skip all that, links in the description to time codes further in the video. Thank you. I'm DigiBro.
And I'm Anime Everyday. Oops. I'm Pantsu Party.
And we're going to watch every anime ever made in chronological order. This is the second episode. You should check out the first one where we watched the earliest available shows. Although, it was pointed out that there is an anime that is... They don't
even
know,
older.
They don't know when it came from. But
it's before World War II, right?
It's speculated to be older than any of the ones we've watched. It was from like 1911, possibly. It's a little older, just based on like the techniques and just how fucking damaged it is, I guess. But it's only 4 seconds long.
They cut it open and count the rings?
I have no fucking idea. It's only 4 seconds long. I believe it's like of a postman waving, basically.
It might be a sailor. I thought it was a sailor.
Oh, it might be a sailor. But like, it's we have watched it. We happen to have watched it a while back.
I also watched it again when we were notified that we missed it.
Oh, just you clicked on it in the comments. It was linked in the comments on the last video, so you can't miss it if you want. But I blinked and I
missed it.
You'll see the title. You can put it on My Anime List. We already had it on our mouths because, like, I had forgotten. Like, I didn't recognize the name when I saw it, but then when I clicked through, I was like, oh yeah, I remember us watching this on the pretense that somebody said, I think it was probably Darkonius or something in the Discord, who was like, oh, like, when are you guys gonna watch the oldest anime? You know, just like linked it, and we just did in that moment. It was something like that. So, yeah, just because it wasn't mentioned in the Wikipedia article or on the website that we're watching all these old shows on, I've heard about some other old shows that we will not be able to see on this website that are available through other mediums. So I don't know if I want to go through, make sure I find everything that's available and like, you know, try to get exact dates for everything and like watch them all exactly in order, or if I'd rather just like go through everything that's on this website and then just consume all that other shit afterwards, you know, just for the sake of making it easier to get to everything. Like, I don't know what's the better way to do it. What do you think?
I think the best way to do it is just to watch what's on the website, and then if we feel the need, like, oh, we might want to supplement this with the other stuff that wasn't, you know, collected on the site, we can go out and seek the other stuff. But we're trying to watch everything. Yeah, it's like, it's not, so,
it's like, it's more about watching everything from the era, because like already, like right from the get-go, there's a bunch of shit you can't watch, like a bunch of shit that was made that just doesn't exist. And a lot of what does exist, the information about it is different on different sites. It's kind of like, the more things people just find and thrust in front of me, it's like, I guaranteed we'll watch those, you know, but like, I don't necessarily think it's as important that they're exactly in order as it is that we just make sure we get to all of those eventually, before we move on to like the next era. 'Cause they are just like kind of a random spattering. Though if anybody has like all of them collected, if anybody knows like every single thing that's available and could get me links, like Darkonius got me a torrent of like a 12-part collection of stuff that was like put on a DVD at some point, some of which is not on this website. So like, we might just take a few episodes to just cover that disc at some point. Or, if I can get a list of everything that's available and I can get downloads to all of it, maybe I'll create a playlist before we do the next episode and make sure it's all in order.
So as we progress, there's gonna be stuff that isn't subtitled.
Yes, that's also another problem. Neither of us speaks Japanese. Both of us could probably watch a kids show and basically understand the first episode, but we would not want to watch a 100 episode unsubbed show. Our Japanese comprehension would not hold up. It would not be fun. So maybe we'll be willing to watch the raws of the first episode of a show if we can't find subs, but most likely we'll just drop it immediately, because unless it's extremely aesthetically interesting and easy to watch unsubbed. And I'm addressing all of this because a lot of questions came up about the viability of this series. We experimented with the format of it a lot, but no format makes more sense than this. This is the best possible way to do it, is just to go through all of anime history one by one, because it's always going to be interesting.
Right,
regardless,
there's always going to be something you didn't expect.
Yeah, and I love to learn about anime history. It's inherently interesting to watch these old shows. They're not worse than watching new shows. Spinning the roulette of, it's not that they're all great, but if we get 7, 6, 5, 5, that's exactly what we'd be getting watching current shows, marathoning everything from the year and watching all the first episodes. And most of these are 2 to 10 minutes long, way easier to sit through than a lot of the modern anime. So I think that just the natural carry of how this series works out will make it interesting to do. I know my anime history well enough to know that there's great stuff in every era. So it will always be exciting to discover new great anime. So that's why I have faith in the idea of this series. But if you want this to continue and you're excited at the prospect of it, please do spread the word. If there's people who would think would be interested in watching this unfold, who would want to take a tour through anime history with a pair of people who are sort of having a water cooler discussion about it as though it was new, because the more views we get, the more incentive there is to continue. How do you feel about the prospect of us actually finishing this series?
Well, it's interesting because it's your and my life mission to just watch every anime, and right. It doesn't really matter in what form this happens in to me.
Right.
It's first you're gonna do it just backwards through time,
right? Well, and I had to also address the influence of this series. I know this is going on long for an intro, but I really want to get everything out there just so that we all are on the same page about why this is happening, because I wanted to do every year a best of video, because Your Movie Sucks does that. He's been slowly going through time where he simultaneously makes a video about each year, usually 2 years after that year is over, so he's had time to watch absolutely everything. And he also has been going back in time from the year he started in. So every year he puts out 2 of these top 10 of the year videos where you have guarantee that he watched every fucking movie that had any buzz that year at all. And a lot of shit that nobody talked about just because he was curious about it and saw the description. So you can be pretty confident that whether or not you would like the same 10 movies he would like, this motherfucker saw everything and that his taste will be perfectly represented. And that's what I wanted to do with my own videos of that nature. And I've done that for 2014, 2016, and 2018. Every other year I managed to find time. But keeping up with every fucking show in a year, or even just marathoning them all in the span of a month and a half at the start of a year,
it's brutal.
It's a fucking lot, because there's just way more anime that comes out, and if you do decide to finish a show, you gotta finish the whole fucking show, and some of the shows are 50 episodes long. It's not the same as just watching all the movies in a year, So it is a difficult task to undergo. And I wanted to start working on older years after having done 2014. I wanted to do 2015 and also do a previous year in history. And I decided to stick with 1991 because that's the year I was born. And I wanted to see what happened, what anime was like the year I was born. And I watched most of the shit from 1991. It was a lot of fun. Eventually, I put out a video called The Portrayal of Women in Anime from 1991. That was about a trend I had noticed that I was extremely fascinated with, but I didn't want to dedicate any more time to doing research to get that project up and running because I didn't think anybody would fucking watch it, and it was taking me way too long to watch everything from 1991, So, this project basically has stalled. I still wanted to get back to it, but it was what justifies me going back to that year, and what justifies any particular year I could pick, when I could just start from the beginning of fucking time
and make a spectacle out
and
of
it will always be obvious why we're doing it in that order. It'll never be like any question about why we're picking the things this way.
The answer is autism.
Yes, the answer is to be as complete as humanly possible.
The database animals
and to do something that would get a lot of attention, because you know, there's a niche appeal to let's watch every anime from the year Akira came out for, like, you know, otaku who are that age who remember that stuff. Like, people worship like Kenny Lauderdale as the boomer king of AniTube, and like he apparently he had called me out in a live stream one time saying I don't watch enough old anime, that I'm too obsessed with current anime. And it's like, well, you know, I really appreciate the stuff he talks about from like that era, but like, that's a niche appeal, is that particular era. It's not that that was the golden age. Anime has been good forever. You know, there's been interesting stuff going on in the medium since the beginning. So even that is kind of arbitrary as compared to like just going back to the start of time. So that's where I'm headed to. It's just like, all right, I do want to cover old anime. You know, I've tried to cover it, but like, it's hard to get people to care about. And I'm a professional YouTuber. I have to make money to, you know, to fund my life. So like, I have to make content that's relevant to people. What is the most interesting way to tackle ancient anime? This is what I consider it to be. So anyway, that was 10 minutes of introduction to episode 2. Hopefully episode 1 got you invested in this series enough to sit through all that. Now let's go ahead and watch some more of these classic anime. Okay, so tonight's first short film was a 17-minute silent film, once again by Sanae Yamamoto, who had done the previous 2 that we watched. It's from 1925.
He's busy.
Yes, and this one is apparently the first work of the like studio that he created to do more. I don't know if that means there was like a bunch of people working on this, but it definitely feels like the most advanced production we've seen so far in terms of like scope and length and amount of character designs and animation all throughout. What did you think of this as like a entertainment property?
I thought it was very interesting, and there were lots of things that we haven't seen before. Instead of the title cards, which are from more Western, like silent movie type things, they had speech bubbles to show dialogue.
That was one of the most interesting parts. Like, all the dialogue is done in speech bubbles like it's in manga, and it looks like hand-drawn, like written in letters. I think it said they were cutouts or something on the website. So it's a really interesting technique, and it doesn't break the flow of the scenes in the way that title cards does. I mean, it does kind of feel like, you know, time has come to a stop for a moment while they speak, because it's like there's not animation during those segments. It's just the text, but like, it still feels more organic than using title cards, and it makes it feel more manga-esque, and this one is like kind of more cartoony than the last one in a way. And the most interesting thing about it is that it's mixing together 2 different parables, 2 different legends of sorts, because the outer, it's like a story inside of a story. There's 2 layers to it. The outer layer is a story from the Arabian Nights, which is, you know, a very popular series, but like, it's not one of the less obscure stories, you know, like, I've never heard this story before. It's very short and simple in a way, but intercut into it is like a parable that is presented in Machiavelli's writing, the like political philosopher of, I think, Renaissance era or post-Renaissance era Italy. Do you know at all? What's your theory? I'm sure people can just
I
look
haven't
it up.
really read anything about it. It's from The Prince, from Machiavelli. I've read some more of his like political writings, but yeah, I think it's just what is it called when it's a story? Not an antidote, but like,
no, it's a parable. It's just like a story he tells inside of making a political point in a book, assumably. So like, it's really odd that would be intercut with an outright fairy tale. Like, it's not the same. It's not like the tortoise and the outer story is like the tortoise and the hare. Like, it is
it's
fantasy.
Kind of jarring though, because like you go from like an Arab environment, like Arabian Night characters, to like, what is a jungle?
It's a very confusing location because there appears to be a kangaroo as well as a lion, like a tiger, an alligator, and a fox.
I mean, assumably the animal characters may have just been added because I don't think they knew about kangaroos back then.
I mean, it's even possible that kangaroo was just a bunny rabbit that looked like shit. Because, like, it was a weird design.
That was for sure, Rue. And there was a monkey man.
I mean, I think it's possible that the original story just
was featured into it.
Like, the original parable probably just used whatever animals were most iconic and was not concerned about presenting a realistic location, you know?
Yeah.
Like, kind of like CGP Gray's Animal Kingdom story, like, videos, where he is just explaining a political concept using the animal kingdom as a light framework of a story, but like he puts a little bit more effort into them all being in like a similar habitat, I guess, but like the point of it is just to use fucking animals to make this metaphor, just to make it more palatable to the audience. So like maybe that's the nature of it, and it's not really meant to take place in one location. But yes, because 1001 Nights is like an actual fictional story, and it's super as
stylized in there, like the clothing and the backgrounds and the environment. It's all very like, it's very tangible. Like you understand where this is. Yeah,
right away we were like, oh, is this like set in Arabia or something? Because like there's a guy in like, you know, like a headpiece, like what do they call the thing? A turban. And like a fucking, you know, like decked out, like opulent kind of outfit that is not Japanese style.
The outfits are really interesting. They have a lot of detail and design in them.
Imagine like Otoyama Gatari, but scaled down considerably in level of detail. And it's kind of like that vibe. But like the first thing we see is a dude smoking this huge ass fucking pipe. So it's got to be like either a hookah pipe or he's smoking pot, because like the pot metaphor, I don't know if pot really existed in Japan in 1917.
Probably
I have
not.
Or 1925. Like,
it's probably just smoking
but they might have
hookah.
heard of it from like, that might be their perception of that culture, is that they smoke like ayahuasca or some shit like that. You know, like there are cultures that are known for smoking drugs even from back then. So like, I don't know if it was supposed to be like...
Well, yeah, they're known for smoking, like, hookah and tobacco.
Right. So, but, like, the implication of the story... Like, you could just take this as a postmodern interpretation that has nothing to do with the original intent, but it is absolutely hilarious that, like, the characters are just all encouraging the main character, like, just sit around and smoke with them. Like, he works too hard. They're like, oh, you work too much. You should spend time with us just hanging out and smoking. So, like... Whether they're smoking pot or not, the fact that it's called The Pot and that it revolves around a story about him finding a literal pot while you could interpret everybody else as smoking pot is fucking hilarious. And it adds something to the story, whether it was intentional or not. But they are just asking him to sit around and smoke, assumably, hookah with him. Like, but he's like, no, he's very diligent. And so he scoops this pot out of the lake, and he opens it up, and, like, a fucking big-ass demon comes out. Like, I was shocked by this design. I'm expecting something like a genie, but it's like a fucking demon with, like, it's like an ungulate, you know?
Yeah.
And so,
and he's like, I'm gonna eat you.
Yeah, he's immediately like, fuck you, I'm gonna eat you. And the guy goes like, oh, there's no way you actually fit in that jar. Like, I reject the premise of your existence, essentially. And the thing's like... fuck you, I can't fit in that jar, and it goes back inside, and he puts the lid on it. So, like, that's the end of the basic story, because the thing gets in the pot, and, like, realizing that he's fucked up, he's like, please let me out, like, I take back what I said, basically. He goes immediately full, like, I don't want to be trapped in this fucking jar anymore, like, forget eating you, just let me the fuck out, right? And the guy says, I'll let you out if you understand the message of this parable. And then he tells him the parable from Machiavelli's book. So, like, this is a new addition to the story, assumably. Like, I don't know if he tells him something specific in the original story or if he just lets them out and they're just amicable after that. But, like, you know, then this is half of the animation. Is this other story inside the story. Do you want to explain that one?
So we're kind of introduced to this fox and lion character, and the fox is kind of using the lion to survive. Like, he's providing him protection and providing him with food. It's not really explained to us why the lion is providing for him, but the fox, like, realizes that he can trick the lion, basically.
He can use his pride against him because, like, the lion is already just a nice guy. Like, I think initially the lion helps the fox because the fox is like, I am starving, I need food. And lion's like, yo, I got you, like, I can get you food. And so when the fox recognizes him as somebody who can be asked to, you know, for help, he realizes he can manipulate that and, like, make himself look even weaker or, like, challenge the lion's masculinity or, like, his, you know, abilities to incense him to go and kill other things. Because he says, like, oh, I bet I know something that's faster than you. Like, you're a great hunter, but, like, I can get more use out of somebody who's faster. And the lion's like, nah, I'm fucking the fastest thing out here. And the fox says, all right, I bet you can't catch that ostrich. So the lion goes chasing after the ostrich, and the fox just jacks his house. Like, he has all these, like, boards on the front of his den. And the fox is like, I want to have a cool den. So he just takes all his shit and puts it on his own den. And then, like, he's worried that the lion's going to get pissed and come kill him. So he's like, a hunter comes into the woods and he tells him about this lion. And he's like, if you want to hunt a lion, follow me. And the hunter fucking murders the lion. So the fox is like, there, well, now I have nothing to worry about. But then he goes back in. And he's like, you know, would have to now go hunt for himself. But when he steps outside, he realizes
tigers and gators.
Yeah, there's all these dangerous animals that would eat him. And he's like, fuck, I can't even go out there to hunt. And now, because the lion's not keeping all these things in check, you know, like the kindness of the lion was the reason that the fox was even able to survive in the first place. And he took it for granted because he didn't understand that, like, you know, having a benevolent leader of the forest is something that will benefit you in the long run, you know? And so, like, the fox ends up starving and eventually having to, like, in desperation, run out and go for food, and then, like, gets eaten by a gator.
And you watch him get eaten.
Yeah, it's incredible. They show him get eaten by the gator, and you're like, well, shit, like, that really came around poorly. Like, but, you know, he got that lion killed for his own avarice, so, like, he kind of had it coming. But, like, that's the parable, is, like, not only should you not be gullible and just let people, like, manipulate your pride, you know, into making you do things, but, like, you also shouldn't manipulate people based on their pride because it can have tragic consequences. Like, it could come back around. And, like, if we were to just work together and, like, agree not to fuck with each other, then we have the best possible outcome for both of us, you know? So he tells this parable to him, and it's basically like, if you understand, I'll let you out. And the demon's like, yeah, I understand. So he lets the demon out, and the demon says, like, let me lead you over here, and I'll show you something. And you have this incredible tension of, like, did the demon understand, or will he betray him? Like, you know, will he be like the fox? Will he just give into his base instinct? Does he not really believe in what this guy is telling him? You know, what if he just eats the guy at the end? And then in the end, it's revealed he gets this big pot, and you have this great moment of the pot growing legs.
Following him back to his house.
Yeah, which is probably has the best walk cycle of anything we've seen in any of these animations.
It's super interesting. Do you think it was just a flex to show that they could make a pot walk?
Yes, I think, because, like, Sanae Yamamoto's work so far has all involved characters, like, just running across backgrounds for a lot of it. And so I think that was part of the appeal, is, like, these stories can't really be communicated with that much depth in the, like, visual department for the dialogue scenes. It's like, we just have to put text on screen because, like, there's no audio, you know? It's hard to show, like, a really artful portrayal of a conversation, but, like, showing the characters just moving across the screen, you get to see animation, feel that liveliness, and see a bunch of backgrounds that look pretty great. This one, once again, has great backgrounds, has much stronger character designs and weird fucking animal designs than the last one, even if some of them are jank as fuck, like the kangaroo. But, like, you know, it's just a really interesting story. Like, and it, after all this tension buildup of the pot walking home with him, it turns out it's full of gold. So, like, the lesson was, yeah, the demon understood, everybody works together, good deeds come around, happy ending. Really interesting combination of these two stories to create a complete narrative out of it. I really enjoyed this one.
Yeah, it was really fun.
As far as 17-minute silent films go, that definitely, like, it sets in a little bit when you're watching characters walk across the screen again and again that you're like, man, this is a quiet movie. There's no sound. But, you know, like this one I was legitimately... What kind of music
do you imagine this would be set to? Do you think it would have like Arabic theme?
I really don't know. I mean, I would just imagine like Tom and Jerry music kind of shit would like, or not even that level, but like Looney Tunes music, you know? Just like that kind of bouncy orchestral...
I don't know, with all the setting they've done for like the beginning of the story, I'd imagine that they'd have like, you know, music that's similarly themed.
I just don't think they probably had that big of a budget for what was, or like that big of technology for what was going on in the soundtracks.
Because this was commissioned by the Ministry of Education.
Yeah, this one in particular was, I mean, I was reading that a lot of these had like accompanying like pianos or narrators. So not like huge scale productions, but it was like people live playing there. It wasn't like playing off a speaker. Some places did play albums that went along with the movie. Like, so that would provide more of a regular score. I don't know what level of like orchestration that would go up to though, you know, like,
right.
And none of that shit fucking exists online, especially if it was performed live. There definitely is not anything of it online, but like there's also a huge amount of variance in like what level of a production this had of like, was this shown in a matinee with other movies, or was this just shown in like a traveling fucking, you know, bus or something like that? Like, was this just shown at art events? So, yeah, I don't really know, but it was engaging from start to finish for me. Is there anything else you wanted to say about it?
Not in particular.
What do you think you would score this one?
This one would get a 7.
I would give this like a strong 7 to a light 8 because like it's a memorable parable. Like, I've never seen this combination of elements before, and like that's very unique from a parable, you know, like something that is literally just a moral lesson. Most of these you've heard since you were a child, and this one like combines a relatively obscure part of the famous Arabian Nights with like Machiavelli, who's a well-known writer, but like the individual parables from his works are not like frequently adapted into stories. So like it's an interesting combination of historical elements that like is kind of a lot more experimental than anything else we've seen. Like, this is way deeper than the tortoise and the fucking hare being adapted as a kid's song.
Yeah.
Like, this has some really interesting application, and it's a good lesson. And like the fact that I have not seen many Arabic themed anime, regardless of like the archaicness of the designs. Like, you know, they did a good job of conveying that like land, and that was cool. So yeah, like I enjoyed it quite a bit. I was surprised.
Do you think that the future films that we're gonna watch are gonna have more of like the text bubble style instead of the screen cards?
I don't know. Like, there's been like so many different ways that these have been done. Somebody said that first one with the guy with the demon blade essentially was done with like cutouts, like each limb was its own piece of paper, sort of.
Whoa.
So they could move that and just photograph that part moving, and that's why it was kind of disjointed in that way, because he's basically like a stop motion character, and like that's mega fucking interesting, you know. And it looks great, and it's like the kind of thing that it might come off like somewhat archaic using the technique with the technology they had at the time, you know, where taking a picture takes a fucking eternity, but like I would love to see more stop motion done in a modern style. I personally wanted to make stop motion animations of anime figurines for a long time, and I've seen some, you know, some stuff that's like more simplistic, like Arby and the Chief that I used to watch. Did you ever watch that series? It was made with Halo figurines on YouTube, like being puppeteered.
No.
It was fairly enjoyable, and I watched it.
I did watch a
up.
lot of Robot Chicken.
That's true. Well, that's like more serious stop motion, you know, and like I've seen a few like figurine videos that come from Japan and maybe trend on YouTube and get like a few 100,000 views or something. But like, I wanted to do it with Figmas, and like I bought all these Figmas of characters who use guns so I could make like action films with them. But like the amount of lighting and staging that you actually have to do even to make something look decent, it was like just beyond what I could do in all my fucking dimly lit ass rooms that I've always had. So yeah, I have not pursued that really, but like I just think there's something inherently interesting about that technique, and I wish there was more use of stop motion in general, even if it was on this level, because it has a unique feel to it that you don't get from, you know, regular styles of animation. So like that's why I get excited for watching some of these old things. It's like stuff just looks and feels different in a way that even if you're not sure why it looks that way, you're just like, huh, I don't see anything like that.
And there's a lot of experimentation on just like the conceit of what animation should be and how it should be done.
Yeah, there's nothing is normalized yet. I mean, most of these are just like one guy fucking around, you know? So, these are mega interesting as like independent films, basically. Let's watch another one, shall we?
Oh, yeah.
So I think it's safe to say that A Story of Tobacco... Oh, let me restart that. So I think it's safe to say that A Story of Tobacco had the most interesting concept and execution of all of these so far, easily, even if it was not the best, and it is unfortunately incomplete. It was originally a 6-minute movie. Only 3 minutes are available, and it kind of just ends, and it doesn't really have time to go anywhere that interesting. But the techniques used to create it are astounding. Do you want to describe what we just saw?
So what we see is a hybrid of live action with cutout animation, like animation done in cutout styles like we've seen in the first film we watched, superimposed on top of the film. And it's just... I can't believe that they were able to do this in the year 1926, possibly even earlier.
Yes, it was like disputed the age of the film, but this is essentially the same thing as like tune on live action movies. Like, it's like Who Framed Roger Rabbit or like fucking Cruel World or fucking Slam Jam, Space Jam.
Disney did some earlier ones, but I don't think they date back this early. I think they're from like the 40s, if I'm correct.
I did not know this technique went back this far, and like I don't know if this is the first one. I don't know if there's some obscure fucking thing from the West that existed before this, but like if this is the first one, it's insane that this technique has existed since 1926. But like, yeah, it's like superimposed onto the photographs, I guess, of the live action.
It's just crazy because like the idea of the cartoon character isn't like that old.
The film or something.
So why, like, who would have the idea to have cartoon characters interacting with the 2D space?
I mean, like, it could be
3D space.
It could, I mean, the idea kind of comes naturally when you think about it. Like, oh, we can draw on film, so we can just animate a character interacting with a human, and it is automatically fun and hilarious.
But he behaves like a cartoon character.
Yeah.
Like,
I think we've made a mistake in modern culture of trying to put a realistic-looking CGI character into the world. And, like, there was a video that Max Giliardi, Hot Diggity Demon, just did recently about the Sonic movie and why, like, it would have been so much better if he had just been a 2D character in the world. And, like, you can use modern animation techniques and stuff to make that, like, look better and integrate better than it could before. But, like, trying to make a photorealistic 3D Sonic just draws attention to the fact that Sonic should not look this way, you know? Like, he's a fucking hideous creature, and it doesn't make sense, and it never should have been done. It wasn't a matter of technology not being good enough to make a realistic Sonic. It's that a realistic Sonic is a bad idea. And, like, he should, if you're gonna make a Sonic movie, it should only be done if he's not a fucking 3D realistic thing. That worked in, like, Paul, you know? It doesn't work in Sonic. So, yeah, I think I fully agree with Max Giliardi's video there, and, like, this movie is a good example of, like, it's a lighthearted kind of comedic movie, so it doesn't feel like the fact that it's jarring matters. Like, that's kind of part of the charm of it, part of the fun, is that there's a 2D character in a 3D scene, and the girl has a really interesting, like, costume design. She's, like, very dressed up, and it's just like a character sitting on her desk inside of a glass, and it's at a pulled back enough angle that it looks kind of good, you know? And when it cuts to close-ups of the character, it's like a two-dimensional version of the desk. Like, they drew the desk as the background, so it becomes a fully 2D animation for a little bit. It's just a really interesting blend of styles that I never expected to see. And apparently the girl actress in the live-action segments is like the little sister of Noboru Ofuji, who created the animation. So that's just an interesting little detail, and like she just looks extremely fucking happy to be there. Like, this is like the most fun. Yeah, she can't stop
smiling. It actually feels like she's interacting with a real cartoon.
Right. Like... It's really fucking adorable. But like the plot is bizarre because it's about this little man who
loves his pipe.
Yeah, and like he gets captured by this girl inside of a glass. Like, because he's like a miniature man on her desk, and she's just curious about him. So she like captures him, and he's like pissed off about it. And so he escapes from the glass, and he's like, "You stupid woman!" And he insists that like women are made from cigarettes. Like that's their origin is from cigarettes, which is a fucking bizarre, I don't know, chauvinistic take. I don't know if it's a compliment. I don't think so. So like he like angrily storms over to like this ashtray or something in the girl's room and like pulls out a cigarette and starts smoking it. And like she takes it away from him, and he gets like pissed off and is like, "Give me back the cigarette." And she just kind of does, because she just seems to be fucking with him, you know?
Didn't she throw it at the dog?
Oh, yeah, she's about to give it back to him, and then she throws it to the dog, because he was threatening to shoot her with a fucking gun, and he, like, shot down at the ground first, but then he was out of bullets. And, like, he's just kind of, like, pathetically like, "Oh, like, you know, I have to just go get it now, because you've duped me."
But
you
his
know?
gun explodes. Like, throws it down,
he
and
throws the gun at the ground, and it blows up just like an Aqua Teen Hunger Force. I was like, what the fuck? Like, I had no idea that the idea of throwing an object on the ground and it just exploding as a joke could have possibly originated this far fucking back. That was fucking hilarious. And, like, it literally is an explosion effect. It looks incredible. And then he's, like, about to red pill her and, like, mansplain how the origin of tobacco is and like, why women are tobacco. Out. And then that's when it ends, right when he's about to go on the ultimate MGTOW rampage. I wonder if somebody destroyed it. Well, it said something about the censoring board was like, had said that it was originally 6 minutes, so maybe they did censor it because it talks about tobacco history and like, I don't know, there's a lot of ways that could be dark or weird. I don't know how edgy this is supposed to be, you know, like, but it is bizarre. So like, I wouldn't say it was my favorite, like, not only being cut off, but just like a weird story that wasn't really clear where the fuck it was going.
But it was fascinating.
Yeah, the techniques alone made it worth watching. And I mean, it's only 3 minutes that you have to sit through.
This would be the coolest thing to see. If this was your first time ever experiencing that.
It would be mind-blowing to have seen this in 1926, I'm almost certain. Like...
What? You can do
I mean,
this.
I can remember when I was a kid being completely fucking mind-blown by like, Space Jam. Rabbit. Or, yeah, like... I think because my mom was like a big fan of Cruel World, and I remember seeing like the insane like stuff in that movie. Like the ending of that movie is like live action footage of New York getting completely drenched in blood as demons rain down on it in 2D style. Yeah, it's fucking intense. Nuts. And so like, you know, seeing that kind of shit as a kid was like, this is mind blowing. And now looking at this, I'm like, it's doubly mind blowing because it's so fucking old. And like seeing just that old timey photograph, like a style of photography you would never expect to see in an anime, right. You know? So it's like really extra jarring in that regard, in a good way. I'm very glad we got to see this. I'd probably give it like a 6 out of 10, but like, that's almost entirely just for the uniqueness of the techniques, not for the story or characters. Though it was fun. It just was like, didn't go anywhere, you know?
Yeah.
You have any parting thoughts on this one?
It's sad that we didn't ever get to see what it was trying to say or what the story of tobacco really was, because I'm sure it would have been interesting. He was proposing that women came from cigarettes.
Yes.
So
very odd proposition.
I would have liked to see that be elaborated on.
Again, I like this could be like a deeply political
really
movie for all we know.
It's the first little sister character in an anime.
Yeah.
Confirmed.
So there you go. That's the story of tobacco. Should we do one more in this video? Or
sure.
2 more? However many more? Because we're already getting close to like 30 minutes.
Yeah,
but
let's do another one.
All right. So from the same creator as the Cigarette Women one, Noboru Ofuji, in 1926 comes his official debut, The Burglars of Baghdad Castle. And according to the website, this was originally a 30-minute film, which would have been the most considerable one we've seen yet. Mm-hmm. But the version that we have is like a cut down 18-minute like highlight reel, I guess, that was like used as a shorter version of it for like, I don't know, maybe for playing it in like front of other movies later on after its initial debut or something. I have no idea, but that's my speculation. But like, yeah, this is like a shortened version, but it does tell the complete story. It's just very jarringly fast in how it's told. But None of that really matters. What's interesting about this is the animation techniques.
Yeah.
Because they incorporate foreground elements, and this is like in a time before cells. And so instead of using cells, what they have is cutouts of, like, let's say there's a tree that's leaves are, they want to like have dimensionality as coming out from the screen. They would make a cutout of like a drawing of the leaves and just put it closer to the camera so that it is casting a literal shadow over the rest of the scene. And if a character passes behind it, and from the camera's perspective, it will look like that thing is in front of the character. And they use this in a couple of parts. And it's also just constantly being done in the background. Like, little pieces of like a distant tree or something will be in front of other parts of the tree, which is kind of weird because it doesn't really add much to the scenes when it's not being used in a really pronounced way. Mm-hmm. And like, the shadows don't necessarily always correctly show like convey the depth of where it should be. Like, if the thing is this far from the camera, like if it's that far in the distance, the shadow shouldn't be as deep as it ends up being by just having it in front of the camera. Even if it's like small and fits back there, like it still kind of looks like it should be further up than it is because the shadow is a little bit too deep. So like, I thought it was, there were things that could be ironed out about the technique, but it's really fucking interesting when you see people pass under these overhangs and you're like, what the fuck? Like, I've never seen this technique used outside of like Yoshi's Crafted World, like the whole thing had a video gaminess to it, because like, if you want to explain the plot of what happens based on the reading I just did for you on the website.
So our main character is a thief. And
he's not. Is he a thief? He's just like the laziest man in the.
He's the laziest man in the world, but he's, it says that he's a thief. What we see him actually do is just hit on a bunch of women. He comes across the princess, and she drops like a lucky talisman.
Yeah.
And he picks it up, and I don't know if the talisman says this or she says this, but like it says that you have to make the only happiness a man is the one he earns or something. So he goes on a journey to go defeat the dragon so he can marry the princess.
Yes. Well, I guess it's implied that just whoever has this artifact can marry the princess. It's just a matter of there's a dragon that you have to pass to get to there. Which is like, I don't know what the hell the deal with that is,
Yeah, so there's like another guy who's like on a mission or a quest to go marry her.
Yes.
He's kind of following her, and he comes across like a centaur man who is beating the shit out of like a fairy, and she's like running away from him, and it's very strange the way it's presented. And he goes up to her and he stabs her. Not her, but he stabs the centaur.
Yes.
And then his sword becomes an umbrella, and the snow fairy tells him like, don't drop any of the snow.
Yeah, she says, like, snow will collect on your umbrella and, like, don't treat it poorly. So, like, he collects a whole ton of snow, and he's like, at first he's like, by thinking of it as my snow, it's not so bad. But then, like, more lands, and he's like, okay, it's heavy, but, like, he's keeping to what the fairy told him. So, like, we see that the other guy who is trying to make it to the princess gets to this fucking awesome Chinese myth dragon that has, like, this really like epic animation of it coming up from the bottom of the screen, like fucking the dragon boss from fucking Zelda Ocarina of Time. And it comes up and it's like a paper cutout that's animated on top of the background, so like it looks really fucking cool. And I was just like shocked by how aesthetically interesting the shot was of it rising up and like the cliffside and it like confronting the guy. And like it just
fire powers.
Yeah, it shoots out a fireball that it fucking like just like burnt, like the guy becomes a fireball and then is sucked into its mouth and eaten. So it's pretty fucking gruesome. And the hero comes and he has all this snow, so he just like is blocking the fireballs with the snow, and then he like throws it into the dragon's mouth and that kills it. So it literally is a Zelda boss fight. And he gets the orb. Which, do you want to describe what the orb does?
The orb is it's a Dragon Ball.
It's, he
can
goes...
have any wish that he wants.
he finds out that the castle where the princess is currently under siege by like an enemy army. And so he uses the orb to just summon an army.
A huge army. You see like tons of guys.
Yeah, it's very much like an anime-ish, video game-ish scene of like a dude using a magical artifact he got from a dragon to like summon a gigantic army. And then a fucking huge battle is depicted, including one of the best death scenes legitimately I've ever seen, where there's 3 archers about to shoot arrows. And like granted, all these guys are drawn like very simplistically because there's tons of fucking soldiers.
Park characters.
Yeah, but like there's 3 guys about to shoot arrows, and then an arrow comes up and takes off all 3 of their heads and pins them to a wall of the castle, and all of their arrows loose and go down into their neck holes afterwards. It's fucking crazy. And that alone is worth watching this whole thing for. That and the weird animation techniques. But yeah, like it was a huge battle with tons of fucking characters. Like
there were tons of characters always on screen. Like it was more than just like a person walking. It's like
and there's parts where there's animation happening in the background while there's a character in the foreground. Yes. Like there's lots of experimentation here. That I was just shocked to see, and just like transitions that were cool that like had papers moving across the image of like a pattern. Yeah, it was overall like a really interesting experiment. It was a little incomprehensible sometimes because of all the leaps in the story. And like I wish we could see the 30-minute version.
Right.
Like the story is kind of baffling, but just the stuff it leads to and like some of the cool moments and cool techniques make it. I found it to be worth watching, even though I'd probably only give it like a 6 out of 10. Like some of the things I saw I've never seen before, so that was exciting, you know. How did you feel about it?
I liked it. The fact that I really couldn't comprehend what was going on without reading a plot synopsis, though, is kind of...
we literally had to read the plot synopsis on the website.
And I mean, I understand that this is like, you can't really see the movie in full, so I don't know. I don't really know how I would score it.
It's hard, like, you don't want to knock the full version of the movie for, like, what this version is, but, like, you know, just rating this version, it's like, really interesting, but the plot is like incomprehensible.
Yeah.
So, you know, but we can't rate the 30-minute version because it's not there. So, that's all the ones we're going to do in this video because we ran long with all of these, but I feel like this series
Some of these were long.
It's already like paying off in intrigue alone. Like I did not expect these to be so different from each other.
Right.
To be so like
many different techniques
experimental
that people are using.
And to be like legitimately entertaining and like tell unique stories that aren't just like I thought more of them would just be Japanese folktales again and again, you know, and like some of these have been really odd. So yeah, it's exciting. I can't wait to do more.
Right.
I love this series, and I hope that we can get as many of these done as possible before you start school, so that like we can have a good, strong footing.
We should try to do one a night.
Yeah, we could easily do that. So look forward to as many of these as we can get done before we have to slow them down inevitably. Peace out.